everyone, that was me, Benny, in some of my favourite travel moments over the last 11 years. But I have to confess something. Those videos are misleading. They make me out to be someone I'm not. A natural born nomad with skill for language learning. With maybe a language gene that I've had my whole life. That's just not me. Okay, actually that was me, and now I do have a knack for learning languages, and I've definitely been on my fair share of adventures. But the point I want to make is that I wasn't born that way. I had to make conscious efforts to change my life, to try new things, and I failed often, many times, before I ever succeeded. Those videos you just saw don't show you all of that, but I want to share it with you now, along with the lessons I learned as I changed from a shy, overwhelmed college student to the digital nomad I am today. So, thank you so much for signing up to the Language Hacking League. You've started on a truly life-changing journey of genuinely learning and speaking new languages. Whether you want to learn French, Spanish, Mandarin, German, Italian, or any other language, the rules are the same. You have to speak it from day one. And that's the one biggest lesson I've learned over the past decade, and I'm going to help you to do that. In this video, I want to talk about the 3 biggest myths in language learning, and then give you the 3 most crucial ways to change your mentality immediately. So you don't have to learn it the hard way, like I did, and so that you go into this project with enthusiasm and energy, ready to take it on. 3 biggest myths that will hold you back. Henry Ford once said, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." When you think you're not smart enough, are too old, don't have enough time, or aren't rich enough to learn a language, your devotion to that idea will create a self-fulfilling prophecy that will make your project hopeless. Number 1, I'm too old. I started learning languages when I was 21, already as an adult, and I can promise you that now, 11 years later, I'm even better at learning new languages than I was then. The age limitation almost feels like common sense. You see way more children learning languages than adults. But I believe that's not because adults are less able to learn languages, but because children tend to have better language learning environments than adults do. Children have complete language immersion. They play in the language, they watch TV in the language, they communicate with their friends and parents in the language. How do adults try to learn languages? By attending once-a-week classes or locking ourselves away to study a dusty old grammar book. That's just not effective. This week, we'll be adapting their strategies and starting speaking to other people as quickly as possible. A friend of mine once told me that babies aren't better language learners than you, they just have no escape routes. In the email I just sent you, I asked you to set aside an hour a day this week to kickstart your next language project. I'm sure many of you are thinking you may not have the time. Trust me, you do. I know you're busy, working, studying, taking care of your family, but if we can all take a look at our routines and weed out the wasted moments in our days, anything's possible. For instance, I learned my Italian while working a 63-hour-a-week job. I didn't have more time than others, but I was strategic about how I made use of the little free time that I had. So let me ask you, where does your non-essential time go? When you're not at work, at university, or with your family, what do you do? Do you watch a TV show that doesn't necessarily enrich your life to relax? Do you spend time waiting in traffic or standing in line, or even waiting for friends to arrive, when you could take out a small book or your smartphone out of your pocket to study? Even these tiny 2-minute windows add up quickly. And in each one, you can learn at least a couple of new words. Do you go out with your friends 4 times a week to relax instead of cutting it back to once or twice? If you give up a habit like TV, sleeping in, or cut back on other activities, that time can be used to make a change that will last the rest of your life. And if you don't have the time, make the time. I don't have the language learning gene. There are people in the world who are geniuses that learn so many languages to mastery level without blinking an eye. I'm not one of them. And you don't have to be. I was actually bad at languages when I was in school. I took German for 5 years and just barely passed. I took Irish or Gaeilge for 11 years and couldn't even say my name is. And I lived in Spain for 6 whole months and could barely ask where the bathroom was. What changed is that I changed my approach to one based on speaking first rather than studying first. Some people just don't do well in academic learning environments, and that's okay. As for the language learning gene, think about that for a moment. Somewhere in your ancestry, it's very likely that someone spoke more than one language through travel or integration into another culture. They did it fine. The ability to learn a language is not a gene that's just inherently within you, but a side effect of your environment. And by changing your environment, you can change your success in language learning. The 3 mental shifts that will directly improve your ability to succeed. Language learning is way more about mentality than it is about skill. One of the reasons many people fail is that they're simply thinking about the process of learning a language in a completely unproductive way. Let's fix that right now. Shift number 1. Stop learning languages and start using them. What do you envision when you think about someone starting to learn a new language? Do you envision a teacher-student dynamic with one person sitting down listening to someone else who's teaching them how to speak this new language? If you do, you need a serious change in mentality. We all need to stop thinking of learning a language as a passive activity. Nothing about speaking a new language is passive. No one can teach you how to speak a new language because no one but you knows what you're going to want to talk about when you start speaking. You have to learn to actively seek out the new words you need to know right now. Don't seek out resources that will teach you a language. Instead, seek out resources that facilitate your own learning, that help you to grow and progress in whatever your current needs are. And these are the types of resources that I'll be sharing with you in the coming days. Shift number 2. You can learn faster by harnessing the power of momentum. One of the main reasons that I can reach fluency in a new language so quickly is because I give myself a short amount of time to do it. Sound contradictory? People tell me all the time that they've studied a language for years and still can't speak it, and that I must be a genius since I only do it in a few months. Well, not quite. Here's what's really going on here. When you give yourself a long time frame, or no time frame, to learn a new language, you end up studying only once in a while, maybe once or twice a week, or maybe once or twice a month. In between each of your study sessions, you lose momentum, and you end up spending most of the time in your next study session trying to remember and relearn what you learned the last time. In many instances, it's much harder to reach fluency in a longer period of time, because even though more calendar days have passed, you haven't actually put in that much more beneficial study time than someone studying every day for just a few months. If you commit yourself to an intensive project, your momentum will allow you to achieve incredible results much faster and more efficiently. That's why it's so important for you to commit yourself to this 1-week crash course. If you work really hard this week, you'll see how powerful momentum is in propelling you forward quickly in your progress. Shift number 3. Recognize and celebrate your successes. Starting a language project is intimidating because there's a huge gap between starting off without knowing a single syllable and fluency. Because of this intimidating gap, so many language learning missions are paralyzed before they ever begin. One of my greatest discoveries over the years has been to embrace the frightening experience of being a beginner learner. See how much fun it can be, rather than lose sleep over the fact that you aren't an advanced speaker yet. Learn to really recognize each and every one of your achievements as you move forward. When you learn to say, "My name is," that's an accomplishment. It's so easy to fall into the spiral of hopelessness in language learning and focus on what you can't do yet, because there'll always be a lot you still can't do. It makes a major difference to focus instead on what you can do today that you couldn't do last week. So as you learn, don't focus on what you can't do. Definitely don't try to achieve perfection. Just try to achieve something, and those somethings will add up. Can you get your point across? Did you understand even just a single word in the reply someone said to you? Did you learn 10 whole new words in the last study session? Each one of these are mini successes. Celebrate and recognize these. Each one is a stepping stone, bringing you gradually but definitely towards speaking that language confidently. This is me at the start of learning Mandarin. See how much I'm hesitating? I went forward regardless and ended up here after just a few months.
对，我看你的视频，你对教中文很有热情。我看你。
Even the most experienced language learners were beginners who made lots of mistakes. Success isn't about never making mistakes. It's about recognizing every major and minor achievement that day. So never forget how well you're doing. Tomorrow is day one. The last thing I want you to take away from this talk today is that you absolutely can learn a new language. And even if you're skeptical, there's no harm in giving just 1 hour a day this next week to see what you can accomplish when you abandon the mental barriers that have been holding you back. Tomorrow, I'll be sending you your first task of the week, which will end in you actually speaking your target language, whatever it may be, on day one. Until then, happy language learning.